Brief introduction to myself and to my co-host Darren. My name is James. I live in the UK. I've been on Clubhouse for about a month. I've previously been a dot-com entrepreneur back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I spent 8 9 years at Wyman, a management consultant focused on products where I built customers. I briefly had a position in science at FintechAndPayments here in London. Joined Growth Street CEO, which was in the lending space. And last the SV payment platform, which is part of Mastercard's the non-card business focus on accounts, i.e. the essential infrastructure used to move money between banks domestically. So real-time payments, payments, prompt pay, and Thailand, and so on. But my Clubhouse is a thing. You've expressed that those are my own, not those of my employer. So mine's out early. Darren, to you.
Morning, James. Can you hear me okay? I'm not sure if it's my audio or yours, but yours was a bit choppy on my end.
Oh, really? I could fine. But I've got a weird echo. So new fusion plug back, so that may be.
Yeah, it could be. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy Sunday. So my name is Darren. I work alongside James here at work. I help James alongside him at the FintechAndPayments.Club. I'm based in sunny South Africa, although it's not too sunny here today. My day job, I run an executive search firm that focuses on the fintech and payments sector, predominantly in emerging markets, so predominantly covering the African continent, with more and more work coming out of the Middle East at the moment, which is quite interesting. So that's a bit about me. I've been involved in the fintech and payment sector for about a decade. And it's I've probably learned more in the last sort of 8-9 months on Clubhouse with James and our fellow sort of moderators and amazing speakers than I probably have in the last 9.5 years being in the industry. So thoroughly looking forward to this session. And if anyone sort of has any questions, then James, we're running Slido, right? But we've also got back channel open as well. So we can use sort of whatever people feel that they want to use this morning.
Hi, Darren and James. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
I don't know. I don't hear myself okay. I hear you guys also with a little echo. But you can hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, wonderful. Good evening. So we're talking about Sunday Surgery AMA. Very interesting topic. And what is it exactly, if you mind me asking?
Sure. Well, James, do you want to take this one, or would you like me to give a quick overview?
Okay, I'm trying a new audio setup. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah,
cool.
We can hear you.
Plug my headphones in, so maybe that stopped the feedback. So, Annabella, the format is an Ask Me Anything. So the whole point here is to talk about whatever topics are on people's mind regarding fintech and payments, and we see whatever people have on their mind and bring them up on stage and get them to ask their question around. Kind of more loosely around the topics around money, and it's a free-flowing format, so whatever people feel like.
Oh, okay. I'm ready. Let's do it. I think we need to tell everybody to become a member of this club, Fintech and Payment, and ping as many people as you can till you get the red bar. So make sure you ping. Everybody ping, right?
You're very kind.
James and Darren?
That's right,
the other piece of news for people, something we run alongside all our rooms is a Slido, so sli.do. If you type that into your internet browser, it's a cool audience participation tool that we use. So we set this up prior to back channel or any other kind of messaging being available by Clubhouse. And it's a way that people can not only ask questions anonymously, if that's what they'd like to do, because not everyone likes to have their name up in lights. It's also a way that if you're in a noisy space and you can't come up on stage, then that's another way you can get in touch with us. So if you type in sli.do into your internet browser and then use the event code SS1A, so Sunday Surgery 1st of August, can you believe it's August already? Then you can access the Slido for today's event There's a poll running right now, which is how did you discover this room today? Useful feedback for us, but also a good way for you to get familiar with the tool. So 2 tabs, the top of your browser. One is the poll tab, and the other is the Q&A tab. You go to the Q&A tab, you can pop in a question. You can ask it in your own name or anonymously, or alternatively, you can raise your hand and join us on stage. It's that simple. Cool. So, Annabella, did you have a question? Or I see Manu's also joined us here as well. So
Yeah, so I would like to get to know you guys. It's the first time I'm in your club. So James, can you introduce yourself, and then maybe Darren will introduce himself?
We did that briefly just before you joined the stage, but in effect, we're 2 teammates that run the FintechAndPayments.Club. I'm based in the UK. I've done a bunch of different things in fintech and payments, and at the moment I work at MasterCard. And the Fintech and Payments Club is a club that's been running just over 6 months now. We're about 44,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, 6 months? I didn't. Wow, it's
Well,
first time I'm here.
I don't know.
Who
brought
pinged
you in,
me?
but it's maybe it's just the serendipity of Clubhouse. But we're a 44,000 member club on Clubhouse. Number
Oh
one.
my God. And
Number
I'm
one
so
for
glad
fintech
I'm
and
here.
number one for payments, I think, when you type it into the search by when you rank it by the people involved. So yeah, it's something we've been doing for a while. I think this is episode 20 something of Sunday Surgery. I first started doing it in late January, early February, and we've been doing it pretty much every week since. Although of late, I've been a little bit bad at this because I play cricket on a Sunday here in the UK, so sometimes it doesn't quite fit with my schedule. But we carry on regardless. So, Annabella, lovely to have you on the stage. Manu, also, Annabella, do you want to introduce yourself briefly? Just give us a little bit of background and maybe whatever your question might be, and we'll get the conversation started.
Yeah, sure. My name is Annabella Gatman, originally from Israel, living in Los Angeles majority of my life. I mainly deal with money. I work with a large list of angel investors from I'm going to say 2 million to 100 million. I also work with funds in the billion, and I have 2 funds in the trillion. I also work with private lenders to help entrepreneurs to build up their startup brand as well. If they need any kind of help also to fix the credit, I help them with that. I work with the family offices from Monaco and Australia, and also Switzerland. I also work with Netflix, Amazon, Showtime, Cinemax, HBO, Universal Studios. Currently, I have a slate of film with Angelina Jolie, Russell Crowe, Eddie Murphy, and many, many more. Yeah, I do a lot of things. I also started my new corporation called Club Annabella Corporation that have 9 divisions. Every division have its own identity, and it's the umbrella is Club Annabella Corporation, but it's all about helping the community and helping people. And I've been helping a lot of people also in Clubhouse, and one of the things that I like to do, beside discovering new startup companies to invest in them and help them get built up, I also help them with the Celebrity Gifting Lounge for the Oscar Award and the Emmy Awards, so they can showcase their startup company in front of the celebrities. In my event, Jennifer Lopez, uh, Bradley Cooper, Vince Vaughn, all of those guys are going to be in my event. And the startup company is going to be showcasing the brand next to Lamborghini, Red Bull, Absolute Vodka, and many more. So we have the event coming up actually in September 18, September 19, and it's going to be really good for the startup brand. And we sold out actually for the startup, but we just extended the little space, so we have a few more spaces left. So it's really exciting. I do a lot of things, but the main thing is to help
great to have you with us.
entrepreneurs.
Thanks for joining the stage. And Manu, did you want to introduce yourself? Manu, are you there? Come off mute, and it'd be great to hear from you. Maybe a couple of sentences about where you are in the world, who you are, and any question or perspective you have. Hi there.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm
Cool.
from India.
And do you have any question or perspective you want us to get the room started with?
Hey, can
Manu, I think we lost you. Okay, no problem. We've got a few more people. Go ahead, Darren. Go ahead.
James, Yeah, I was going to say, what was my sort of Manu Fai's voice?
Sure,
I've got a question for you if we want to kick things off. Okay, so future of retail payments, and what I'm specifically talking about is the evolution of how payments are made within retailers. So clearly, we're not going to start talking about the world of COVID and what have you, and how that's accelerated digital payments and contactless. Because I think we've covered that numerous times over the last 6-7 months. But where do you see the future? If I was to wind the clock forward, say 24 months, maybe 3 years. We had Yassine on a couple of weeks ago, who was talking about sort of the Chinese ecosystem, fintech ecosystem, and there's a lot of biometric payments that are done there via face. Do you see that coming sort of mainstream into other markets? Do you see QR code being sort of prevalent?
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate your role at MasterCard, so I'm not going to ask you the MasterCard's view, but your personal
nice
view.
Open question as well. So there's lots of different directions I think we could take that in. But first and foremost, I think clearly you've got the divide between retail payments in a store versus retail payments at distance, typically remotely through your PC or more likely your phone these days. And I think that's probably the first dichotomy that I would draw. But what I think is interesting about the physical store is that we're seeing not only the ability to have lots of different ways to interface at the kind of the cashier's desk, but more importantly, people are finding ways to set up payments on your phone, but in the physical location. So what you find is you've got some experimental stores, for example, in the grocery space, where effectively you walk through the door, pick up whatever you want, and you walk out. And there is some form of technology that's basically identified who you are, checked that you've got some kind of payment credentials registered with that store, and then effectively they are tracking what you've picked off the shelf, what you're walking out the door with, and that's it. That is the payment experience. Effectively, I think the future of payments in the physical store is going the way of having no payment experience that it's going from basically one click to 0 click, right? So you will see this in some experimental stores around the world, from the likes of Amazon Fresh, some of the leading grocery supermarket chains, etc. But I think kind of the quest is always about how do you reduce friction in the payment experience? How do you make it even more convenient for people, right? We're used to the kind of Uber type experience where we order up a car, it arrives in front of us, we step in to the car, it takes us where we want to go, and at the end of the journey, you just get out the car, right? There is no let me now fumble with my wallet, find my change to pay the driver, approve something in an app on the phone or some kind of terminal, built into the taxi. No, none of that. It's a 0 click experience when it comes to kind of the checkout experience with someone like Uber. And I think we're seeing the same happening within the retail payment space. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, I was going to say, we saw that in South Africa a couple of weeks ago. Shop and go. They just forgot the payments part, but I'll forward you a video afterwards.
I think it's
totally.
Because it's to make it as frictionless as possible, and the frictionless way to go from 1 click is basically get to 0 click. So I expect to see more of that. I also expect to see more people using the. I also expect to see more in the store to basically do the comparison, find what they're looking for
in the store, to basically do the comparison, find what they're looking for, etc. Potentially pick it up on the shelf,
then it's there,
and then organise payment on their device. If it's not a 0 click model, then it's there.
I don't know if that's me,
and people can do that. So Darren, I'm getting a massive echo.
So that I think is also the next wave, right? Is to have more of a kind of in the store, but using my device, and there's probably payment built into that device, almost like you're blending the two. This kind of the offline online world. What I would do in store, instead of having to tap with a card or a device, it's kind of I don't have to go to a specific terminal. It's done through the device itself wherever I am in the store. I think that would be the kind of next stage in the physical location. When it comes to remote, obviously we've got lots of people focusing on the kind of digital wallet capability. They're kind of trying to remove the friction of the online checkout experience. So trying to avoid you having to identify who you are, where you live, if you're having good shift, enter in payment credentials. It's all kind of stored, waiting for you there to go. And so I think that's the way that more and more brands online are trying to get to try and make that checkout experience as easy as possible. And the online world tends to bifurcate between what's seen as the kind of member checkout method, which is I have shopped with you before as a brand, you've got my credentials on file, and effectively, I've logged in or you've recognized me some way when I've landed on your website, and because you know who I am, it's going to be very easy for me to buy from you because you have all the credentials there. So the Amazon one-click solution is very much we know where you are, what your preferences are, whether you've got Prime or not, where your address is. We've got these different payment options on, but there's a default one that you just use whenever you want to, and hence you can make a one-click payment. And that's the kind of the member direction. Then there's the guest checkout, which is I've never been to that brand before, you don't know who I am, and therefore there's some way that I have to convey all this information to you at the point of checkout to make sure that the purchase goes through. And there, I think we've seen some continuing innovation around what can be done there, but effectively you're coming up to the stage where you've got a virtual wallet that kind of travels with you, regardless of who the merchant is. There's some kind of interaction which goes, actually, you might not have shopped at this specific merchant before, but because you've got a virtual wallet that kind of travels with you, it makes that checkout experience easier. So it might be because it's using this new thing called Secure Remote Checkout, which is all the card brands clubbing together to have like a virtual wallet to make that checkout experience easier. Or it might be because you're using some form of super app or wallet system that basically becomes more and more universal, a bit like you have with PayPal today, right? So I may not have checked out with that merchant before, but I've used PayPal. PayPal have my credentials, and so by paying with PayPal on that unknown merchant that I've not worked with before, I don't have to go through all the rigmarole of entering all my details. And you'll see a number of different players basically trying to do the same thing that PayPal does for many of us today. So that might be a super app from China, like you mentioned earlier in the sessions we had already seen. So the kind of WeChat to Alipays and the equivalent of those, as well as a whole host of others, whether that be digital giants like Google getting into Google Pay, Facebook, etc., Amazon, etc., where you can use Amazon credentials not just on Amazon but on other merchants, and a whole host of people doing that. And the last piece I'll say before I close off and take any further questions on this is the afterpay, kind of buy now, pay later, Klarnas, etc. of this world, which I think is the other main dimension. Because effectively what they're doing is they are using the fact that we can offer you finance at the checkout stage. You don't have to pay for it now, you can pay for it over time, and using that to basically build this kind of super app wallet capability that follows you wherever you go. So because I maybe sign up for something like a Klarna service or whoever it might be, they've now got my credentials, they now know who I am, and so by the merchant plugging into that buy now, pay later service, it makes the guest checkout service a lot easier because I just go, I'm with Klarna, and they go, oh, okay, fine, Klarna's given all this information about you, you can complete the payment easily with one click and move on with your life. And I think that is the other kind of big forcing function into the payment space, I think, particularly in retail, but particularly in the online space as well. So those I think are the kind of main vectors I can see. Clearly, anything that takes out friction is seen as a massive plus, and you don't get any less friction than 0 clicks, so to speak. So I think that ability for people to be recognised, I think, is going to be key. You mentioned Face ID, etc. Very easy to do on a smartphone because the cameras are good, front-facing. There's a whole load of other security credentials within the device, which makes it easy to go. Not only is this James's face in front of James's iPhone, but we know this is James's iPhone because we've seen James's iPhone 17 times before. And in fact, the way that James holds his phone is common with everything else that's been happening that we've observed with his phone. There's a lot of information on posture, on the way that you hold the device, the way you type, all those sorts of things that gives someone the confidence that it is really you using your phone. That makes that part of the experience much, much better. The ability to do that with a device you haven't used before or a device with lower capability is much harder. So I don't anticipate to start seeing Face ID on laptops, for example, or I don't expect to see a lot of Face ID not by your device but someone else's used at the point of sale. I think it's a lot harder to get it right. and I think it raises a lot more privacy and concerns around personal identifiable information. People are roughly comfortable with the idea that bioinformatics sit on their device. But when the idea that those then get distributed around the world and different merchants have access to that, people get a bit creeped out by it. So I think there's some natural kind of human behavior around the limitations of what that technology can do. Hope that helps, Darren. Gets you started. But yeah, go for it.
James. It does. Just a follow-up question. So you just mentioned about the merchants, and merchants clearly now have so many different options. What we're seeing, a bit of a growing trend is soft POS, right? So a point of sale application on the stream. What's your view on that? I suppose, consumers, how happy are consumers going to be, tapping their card on someone's phone? Have you got a view on that?
So great call out. I think it's a really important dynamic because when you are building out a payment capability, you need to think about two things primarily. Can you issue the ability for people to pay in this new way to as many people as possible? So it becomes useful because most people have it. So therefore, if you're a merchant who wants to sell stuff, if you offer that payment option, lots of people will be able to pay that way. On the flip side, if you're a consumer, there's no point having a payment credential if you can't spend it. So you have to build what's called acceptance, which is to say all the people trying to sell stuff also accept that way to pay. So you have to balance this kind of marketplace, both the supply and the demand. And one of the challenges that I think the card networks have faced in developing markets in particular is building acceptance. It's getting increasingly easy to issue payment credentials digitally to people that have even a basic smartphone.
James, I don't want to interrupt, but it's so hard to hear you. Darren, you can hear loud and clear, but you, it's not so loud.
Okay, thank you, Annabella. I'll try and speak up. Is that any better?
It's better, but I think you need to maybe something with the Wi-Fi. I don't know, not that loud.
All right, thanks for the heads up. Let me see what I can do to improve it on the fly. But it's a different audio setup I'm using today, which may be the reason.
Darren, talk for a second.
I'm using a sort of a club deck thing, which I might come off shortly because I think the audio quality is so great.
All right, let's run with it for now, and if we have to change it up, we'll change it up. But so coming back on the soft POS point, so yes, acceptance is a big issue, particularly in developing markets, because the physical terminal that people have to effectively buy and put on their desk is an expensive piece of kit relative to of other technology forms, particularly when you get into the world of relatively cheap Android smartphones. So I think from that perspective, anything that allows you to accept payments without having that initial barrier of having not only being able to afford the physical terminal, but being able to effectively have it registered, distributed to you, and all the logistics that come with it. Having a soft POS, as you say, which is effectively the ability to receive payments through a smartphone as a merchant, is a massive step forward because it basically turns every smartphone into the ability to receive a payment. Now, there's lots of different ways that you can interface in that regard, right? You can use QR codes where one smartphone scans the screen of another. You can use Bluetooth, although it's pretty hard to make that work sometimes, I find personally. Or you can use contactless near-field communication, NFC. The only challenge there at the moment is that really that's only available on the Android ecosystem because Google and others have basically said, yes, we're prepared to keep the NFC antenna as something that's available for different apps and different service providers to tap into. Whereas Apple have said no to that. And Apple have said the only way that you can use NFC on an Apple device is if you use Apple Pay. And they are yet to produce a service which allows you to accept payments through Apple Pay. So I do think it's an important enabler, particularly in developing markets, but I think also for those that are always on the go as tradespeople, etc., because it just means that you can just use the thing that's always in your pocket and you don't have to take out additional hardware and pay for that and all the expense that comes with. So soft POS, I think, will be a big positive But what I expect that to mean is that the physical form factor of the card becomes less important, because as people get more comfortable with receiving payments through a mobile phone as a soft POS, then I expect them to become more comfortable with making payments that way too. So you'll find that over time we become much more interested in the digital credentials that we use for payment than the physical credentials that we hold in our wallet. It becomes much more about what's buried in the phone. So we should expect more of that in the way that you may have seen tokenization, which is the representation of your physical card in digital form on your phone for things like Apple Pay and Google Pay. We should expect that to continue further.
Thank you.
No problem at all. So, Russell, welcome to the stage, and Manu too. Manu, we'll go back to you in case you had a question for follow-up. Otherwise, Russell, I can see you unmuted, so why don't you go ahead? Good to get a couple of sentences, introduction to yourself, where you're joining us from, and any question or perspective you have. Over to you.
Yeah, sure. I'll briefly introduce myself and then I would like to get straight into the question. So my name's Russell. I am the CEO and founder of NFT music platform called Madbop, MADBOP. And basically the whole idea of our platform is to help musicians get into the NFT space and for them to sell their NFTs to their fans. So my question for you, James, is for basically like just merchants and obviously people like developing websites and stuff. Now, there's numerous payment gateways out there, such as like Stripe, PayPal, all that sort of thing. What would you say are the best payment gateways right now that you've seen within for like websites and people that developing websites?
No problem. Thanks for
thank
the
you,
question,
James.
Russell. So you mentioned Stripe. They have been phenomenally successful. The kind of Collinson brothers have done an incredible job of making the business of kind of setting up payment, if you're an online merchant, as simple as possible. And increasingly, I'm seeing the benefit of that as a consumer, because it means that once I've kind of set myself up with Stripe, it's becoming easier to set myself up with payments for another merchant who uses Stripe, because I've used a merchant previously that already has me signed up on Stripe. So I think they have been doing an incredible job of that, and they seem very focused on expanding out the services they can offer, as well as trying to keep the price as keenly placed as possible. So they certainly seem to be the superstars in this space, and they are, I think, really competing hard with the likes of the traditional acquirers and gateways that you'll see. They also, I think, have been working hard on getting a expansive international footprint, because ultimately I think the brands that they are providing for are truly multinational brands. What I have found in the past is that you can find gateways that are quite parochial, in that they serve a very limited geography because that's their focus. And I think if you're a business that's looking to collect payments from anywhere in the world, then I think you have to look for the right partner that really has the global coverage. Not only do they accept the traditional ways to pay that are international, like the major card schemes, but also potentially have a whole range of other local payment methods that people may be familiar with, and maybe more cost effective for them as consumers. So effectively, if there's a national scheme or way to pay that's very common, then the big players should be able to provide most of the payment methods that are available in that country, and not just the internationally recognized ones. So people like Adyen, ADYEN, I think have a very big global footprint and seem to be competitive on this space as well. And certainly the friends and contacts of mine in the e-commerce space who do have a strong international footprint, tend to be focusing on one or two of these type of players. But it really does depend a little bit on who your intended audience is, and to some degree also the type of business that you're doing. And the reason I say that is that for some industries which are perceived to be higher risk for payments, then you do find increasingly the numbers of specialist providers that focus on that particular niche. So, for example, in the gaming and gambling community, what you'll find is that there are specialist payment providers for those because they focus on the challenges that go around that community and authorizing payment. And so I would think carefully about the industry that you're in, what you're trying to achieve, who your audience is, and then do the research on that basis to identify the right provider for you. But it certainly doesn't seem like a bad place to start with the likes of a Stripe or an Adyen, someone that has that global coverage. If you don't know who your audience is initially, then it should give you some good coverage from the beginning. Hope that helps, Russell.
Yeah, no, that's it. Thanks. Yeah, awesome, James. Thanks for answering that.
So, just a quick room reset while we're here. So, you're listening to Sunday Surgery with the FinTech and Payments Club here early morning on a Sunday morning here in the UK. I can't believe it's August already. This year has just flown by. The FinTech and Payments Club is a top 40 club on Clubhouse with the number one rank for FinTech and Payments on Clubhouse. We're about 44,000 people, growing every day. And we are a volunteer community. My teammates, Darren and others, all help out from across the world. We have moderators from the west coast of the USA all the way through to Singapore. We run regular shows throughout the week. Sunday Surgery is one of those. And if you'd like to learn more about the club, please do hit the greenhouse icon at the top of the page or go to FintechAndPayments.Club. You'll see our website in the title of this room. There you can learn more about the club. You can get in touch with us. All our contact details are there. And most importantly, we have a calendar which you can subscribe to. And if you subscribe once, then our events will just magically appear on your phone or on Google Calendar, whatever you might use. And that way, a few days in advance, you'll get notification of an upcoming room and can schedule your day accordingly if it's something of interest to you. It's something that we found is a good way to keep in touch and keep up to date with the events coming up, as we find the notifications for some people on Clubhouse are a bit hit and miss. Darren, anything I've missed? Anything we should do at a room reset?
No, I think we've covered it off. We've got a number
You
of events
forgot to
happening.
tell them to ping, ping, ping.
Sorry, Annabella, I missed that. Sorry.
You need to tell them to become a member and to ping so they bring more people in the club. Everybody ping more people into this club so you get busier so we can give more advices to more people, right?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, you took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, I think James, we've obviously got a number of series that run sort of weekly, right? So we have a Beyond FinTech series that's hosted by one of our colleagues, Sophie, and that covers everything from the world of embedded finance and the future of FinTech, which is a fascinating show. We do a number of rooms on diversity, so championing sort of diversity across the sector. That's been a big focus for us over the years. We do the news wraps, which happen most weekends, and that covers pretty much the globe. So we have it runs twice a weekend, James, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday morning for kind of Europe and in UK, and then we've got the Saturday afternoon sessions, which cover sort of Asia Pac and the States. So yeah, there's regular shows, but as James mentioned, if you click on the little green house right at the very top of this page, you'll get to see sort of a carousel of some of our up and coming events. But for more information, just visit the FintechAndPayments.Club. So FintechAndPayments.Club, which is a real domain, and you'll find out lots more information about the club, the moderators, the members.
Yeah, great to thanks for reminding me on all those housekeeping items. So Alonso's just raised his hand, join us on stage. Alonso, would you like to go ahead on mute, maybe give us a couple of sentences about yourself and where you're joining us from and your question or perspective? Over to you, sir.
Hey, James. I follow you in the tech news around the world crew, and I've heard you speak often. So definitely a great room that you're hosting so far. I just really wanted to piggyback off of what you said about Stripe, because I'm actually creating a music marketing platform right now called You Heard It First. And just wanted to say what's up to Russell and the music space and the music tech space. Definitely would like to get connected with you as well. But we are using Stripe, and we chose Stripe for all the reasons that you just stated. But also, I noticed when dealing with Stripe, their customer service is absolutely impeccable, and plus they are trying to like be ahead in other things in regards to like what your developers can use. So like we just installed the API for Stripe ID. So like all these ID verifications that are going to be, I guess, a common thing in certain countries and probably across the globe. They're already ahead of the game on that, and they've already created a API for that. So, your tech team, would probably already have a use for that and kind of be beating the curb in just making sure that there's no bots on your platform. So, I just wanted to kind of mention that and say hello to everybody, and I appreciate you for hosting this space, James. Thanks.
Thank you, Alonso. No, I appreciate the feedback and also for the experience you've had in with Stripe. So hopefully that's helpful to Russell too, and you guys get the chance to connect given your music focus. Very cool, excellent. So I'm just going to check on to Slido, see if we've got any questions coming up there. In the meantime, if you're in the room and want to join us on stage, feel free to raise your hand. Just click the hand raise icon at the bottom of the page.
James, sorry, do you mind if I
Go
ask
ahead.
another question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you touched on it very, very briefly when we were talking about sort of payment provider or different payment sort of mechanisms, and you mentioned the super app. Saw this week that PayPal looked to be sort of launching their super app. Who do you think is going to win this war? Or do you think there's going to be multiple heroes? Do you think it's going to be the big techs? Do you think it's going to be the fintechs? Do you think it's going to be another? What's your view?
It's a good question. So I've obviously we're aware of the rise of the kind of the rise of the super apps in China, and it's a very particular environment in China. I think, given the way that things have transpired there, they were very resistant as the Chinese government and maybe the central bank there to let in international payment networks, and as a result, they've ended up with homegrown payment capabilities, not only in the form of these super apps like WeChat and Alipay, but also in the form of the China Union Pay card network. So they use the mass scale of China and quick adoption of those services to then become kind of a powerhouse in their own right, and are now obviously encouraging their expansion overseas. So it's created almost like a very different ecosystem as a result than what we see around the rest of the world, where perhaps competition was a lot more open from the beginning. I think the concept of the super app is a fascinating one, and I think it's really, for me, it's grown up in places not only in China but other parts of Asia, where this has almost been the kind of the first foray for e-commerce in an economy. It's really kind of galvanized the ability to do e-commerce, and it's covered obviously multiple verticals as a super app would. It's not just payment, it's the marketplace for buying and selling. It may be the way that deliveries are organized, whether that be fast food or something else. It might be the way that you do early banking digitally, and so on and so forth. So they've normally come along and grown into critical mass because they've caught the digital wave as an economy starts to move much more forcefully into digital commerce. So to some degree, in other parts of the world, that's a lot harder to achieve because that wave is already, the first wave was already broken, and we're on to the second or third waves of digitization. And so you've got a more fragmented, more competitive market in that regard. So I think the opportunity for somebody to be demonstrably, the super app in an economy is harder if it's already that kind of competition landscape has developed. In some of the developing markets, there's still yet to go through kind of mass digitalization and the kind of big change from physical to e-commerce. I think the opportunity still is there. But from what I've seen so far, you still have a certain degree of fragmentation happening, and you don't necessarily have the same conducive environment for everything to be forced through a single brand. So if I look to parts of Africa that you'll probably be